We first told you about Laura Levis last fall after her husband, Peter DeMarco, wrote a Globe magazine piece about her death and what he learned in the years after. The story detailed the numerous emergency response, healthcare system, and individual failures without which Laura would likely be alive today. In his piece, DeMarco told us how Laura walked by herself to Somerville Hospital as an asthma attack was coming on around 4 a.m. on a September morning in 2016. As surveillance video shows, she walked up the hill and found two separate entrances at the hospital, neither of which had a visible emergency room sign. She chose one but found it was locked. And as her attack worsened, she got within 29 feet of the unlocked door but couldn't make it, so she sat down on a bench and called 911, telling the operator she was in the parking lot. The problem was that her call had been routed to a regional operator at a Mass State Police Center 18 miles away, and when that operator transferred Laura to local police in Somerville, her attack had gotten so bad she could barely speak. At one point, dispatchers sent an ER nurse to look for her, but surveillance video showed the nurse stepped just outside the locked door and looked out for only 12 seconds before going back inside. And the guards who were typically at the front desk were also not there that day, instead assigned to so-called patient watch inside. Laura lost consciousness as emergency crews searched an area at the bottom of the hill for her. They ultimately found her about 10 minutes after she placed the 911 call, and by then she'd gone into cardiac arrest. 6 days later, Laura Levis, an otherwise healthy, active 34-year-old woman, died of hypoxic brain injury. In the years since, Peter DeMarco has been fighting for reforms at hospitals across the state to make sure that what happened to Laura never happens again. He started with the company that runs Somerville Hospital, Cambridge Health Alliance, which DeMarco says ultimately acknowledged their mistakes and made some structural changes at the hospital. He's also worked with lawmakers to push for two bills that would mandate state hospitals ensure safe access to emergency rooms and remove limits on malpractice damage awards. But in a new piece in the Globe, DeMarco dives into one part of the system that failed his wife that he says hasn't gotten any better since 911 calls. He joins me now. Peter, thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me back.
Let me ask you, you wrote this incredibly sad and remarkably candid story. You are working to effect structural change. What made you decide to write this piece?
The 911 piece, everything started with that 911 piece, with her call. Everything went wrong from the moment she dialed 911 on her cell phone. And I had done a decent amount of research for it, for the story that I presented in the Globe in the fall. But there was just, to me, there was more to know. And so this winter, I started meeting with 911 operators, with industry experts, with our state 911 department. Leaders from there have been very open and candid with me about how the system works and how it doesn't work. And also, they've been candid about changes that have come to the system that could improve it for other people making calls in emergencies where they can't speak, they cannot give their location.
So you sat down in the middle of the night, 4 a.m., on the bench where your wife called from. You placed multiple 911 calls. What did you find?
Sure. Well, first of all, I had some help with this test. The Somerville Police Department, their deputy chief, assisted me with this test. It was official. We had operators standing by at the Somerville Police Headquarters to take pictures of where we would appear on their screens. And that's if we appeared on their screens. Part of the problem with the system is that not every call goes to your local police department. Massachusetts introduced a new system starting after Laura's death. It is called Wireless Direct. For people in your town may have announced it on your town website or your police website.
Yeah.
It's almost every single community in the state has Wireless Direct, and the idea is you make a 911 call on your cell phone. It should be just like a landline. It goes to your local police, and that cuts out the middleman, which is really a waste of time.
But that's not working the way it's supposed to, right?
It's not working as well as it's supposed to. I'd say it's from what state officials have told me, and also what our test showed. Not every call is getting to local police. In fact, on average, half the calls don't get to local police. They still go to a regional center or to the wrong department. It's a lot of calls.
What about this other system, Rapid SOS, which I think system is the right term to use, which is supposed to be dealing with the problem that you've been documenting? That's not working as well as it's supposed to either, right?
Well, it's definitely an improvement over what's been out there. Okay. So Rapid SOS is so to take a step back, the cell phone carriers are the ones who provide the location to 911 operators about where you are. They have traditionally done this. But they have been, they have fallen short, certainly in many ways. They fell short with Laura's call. they placed her hundreds of feet away from where she was, really. So a team from MIT and Harvard, these two guys got together. They were grad students, and they decided to see if they could invent a better mousetrap and create a supplemental system that could better locate you when you call 911. And they have had some great success in doing this. Their system isn't perfect. It doesn't work for every single call. Part of that is because if you have an older phone, their system won't work. If you haven't updated your phone software, it won't work. But when it's working about 65% of the time, and when 911 operators receive that supplemental rapid SOS location, is often a tighter circle, and that's what an operator sees. They see a big yellow circle on the screen that covers 1 city block, 2 city blocks, 10 city blocks, a mile. There's such randomness to where your call will be located. That's one of the major stumbling points of the whole system.
So do municipalities in Boston, not to get too down in the weeds technologically, but this is important, do all cities and towns right now use both wireless direct and rapid SOS, or is rapid SOS sort of slowly being embraced?
Sure. In our state, the state 911 department, they have implemented rapid SOS throughout the entire Commonwealth. So every 911 operator...
Seems like a good thing.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. And so every 911 operator will have access to a rapid SOS signal when it appears with a call. It doesn't always appear with a call.
So as you place these calls, getting help from the Somerville Police Department to the operators who you decided beforehand to work with, you found, how many calls did you make? Remind me, I read the piece, but I can't remember the numbers. How many calls did you make, and how many people were able to accurately and adequately locate you?
Sure. So we placed 8 voice calls, and we made 3 text calls, because now in Massachusetts you can actually text to 911. Of the 8 calls we placed, only 2 went to the Somerville Police Department. We were making these calls from Laura's bench outside Somerville Hospital, which is right in the heart of Somerville. So all the calls should have gone there.
Yeah.
Only 2 did. 2 went to Boston Police by mistake, and 4 went to a regional center in Essex County, actually.
What was it like to sit on that bench making those calls and get the results that you did?
Well, of course it's very difficult to go back to that bench.
I can't imagine.
But to me, the value of doing this test was to go there and to see if Laura had made these calls, would she have been saved? So I wanted to know that specific fact, as well as all the other facts, as well as, well, how does the system change? How is everyone in the state affected? It was, there were some positives to the test, I will say that. As our calls progressed, our 911 operators, sometimes they got terrible readings for us at first. We were put in Charlestown for one call. One call, the operator had no idea where we were. With text calls, they bounced. We were at Tufts University in Medford. That was where they showed us. As the voice calls progressed, though, updates came up on the operator's computer screens that narrowed that circle down to where we were, to within about 250 feet of our location. That is still a large area. That's almost a football field.
I was going to say, thinking back to your original piece, remembering what your wife went through, that's great that it's narrowing down, but that's not enough.
It still needs to go further, yes. There needs to be more change. And the hope is that, that in the future, the data that your phone set sends when you call Lyft or call Uber, that location data, that's what Rapid SOS is using. Some of the cell phone carriers are starting to use that data in their calculations. It's a necessary step. It's a step that should have been, quite frankly, made long ago. And hopefully, a year from now, 2 years from now, that circle will be really tight. Maybe as big as a studio, or maybe as big as the plot that your house sits on.
Are you going to keep writing about this stuff, or do you feel like you've sort of done your part at this point?
I've been trying to do as much advocacy as I can, following Laura's story, because there are so many ways that, there's so many changes that are needed. I will certainly keep following 911. I will keep following asthma. I've done an asthma awareness campaign as well in May for a national asthma group. I will still be trying to talk to hospitals and push legislation to get some of these changes made. My work's not done.
Okay. Well, we'll have you back. Talk more about it. Peter DeMarco, thank you.
Thanks for having me.